members who put together an alliance, a coalition, a campaign known as BroadLand. And for the last 3 years, we have been the lead advocate for what became in the infrastructure bill, the provisions known as BEAD, that has the mission, the purpose, the goal of connecting every American to broadband internet for all. It has been extremely effective. I can't thank our members and the Encompass team and Jeff Sharp and everyone who has worked together. And we're going to start this segment with a video, and then we'll come up after the video and just have a discussion of the things that this campaign and our advocacy has been able to achieve. First, I just want to recognize Mignon and Jeff Sharp and the video. That was the first time I've seen it. It really, I think, captures how powerful and compelling our message has been over the last 3 years through this campaign. It really kind of summarizes well what we've been trying to communicate to policymakers at the highest levels, from the White House through the administration, congressional, FCC, now down to the states and to the mayors. And so it's been a remarkable effort that has had really, and I want to thank all those, especially here on the stage, and all the companies in Encompass that have financially supported the campaign, because it made a difference. And Mignon, I'd like to kind of start with you as you look at what is to come as 42, a little bit more, $1 billion goes into the deployment, but we also have the ACP, the Affordable Connectivity Program. As you represent different companies and in the BroadLand campaign, what is your message telling those companies how to prepare and what to do and how to take advantage of this moment?
Well, again, thank you for having me as a part of this campaign. For me, message one is the job is not done. But the people and the companies that are able to get the job done are in this room. That regardless of size, regardless of where you call home, that there is a place for connecting these communities. Each of us has a role for connecting these communities. And I'm proud to be a part of the campaign, because when I look and speak to all of you at this forum and others, you recognize that you haven't shied away from that, and you are willing to collectively buoy us financially and attend meetings with us, with key policymakers and influencers, to say this is how it's going to get done. It's not going to be the same in every hamlet, but this is how we connect these communities and close these divides.
Mike, as you tell a little bit about Granite, but also about the role that Granite has had on one of the very important provisions in the NTIA, the Commerce Department guidance, that promotes wholesale competition, open access, and why that's so critical, because we're deploying to unserved, underserved areas. By this very definition, it means there's nothing there now, and what is to come will be probably one monopoly, one wire into that small town or community or in those areas of the country that are unserved and underserved. Why is competition and promoting competition through wholesale so important?
Thanks, Chip. It really is vital, really, for the end users that are in those locations. And while we're thinking about the 30 million people, individuals and families at Granite, and our focus is on the businesses that are in those geographic areas that we service that also need internet. And Chip, just to step back and provide a little bit of information, I see it's on the screen, about the entities that we serve. Granite serves more than 6,000 business and governmental agencies, big brand name companies that we have all heard of, including governmental agencies. I'm going to talk in a minute about the post office, because I think it's representative not just of one of the customers that is affected by these policies, but by the fact that it's a small business. And just like the small businesses that are next door or down the street, they're significantly limited by their lack of access to internet services at their geographic locations, which means they can't expand, they can't provide the services that they need to the people that rely on those businesses. So in total, we serve about 700,000 business locations and governmental agencies throughout the United States. And so we do have a national view on this. And just to illustrate how it plays out, in our view, providing for the past 20 years TDM service to about 30,000 US post office locations. One of the things that the post office has been trying to do is to get broadband access so they can provide additional services at retail post office locations. And under research that they did at the time of the NTIA was reviewing this, there was 5,000 post offices that were unserved or underserved for the definition of broadband, which obviously limits their ability to provide SD-WAN and other applications that they want to utilize. And just so you see how it lays out, I have a map of Massachusetts, which a lot of people would consider to be a state where there's a lot of broadband access, a highly populated state. But even in Massachusetts, of the 350 or so post offices, there were 68 post offices where under the 25/3 speed, broadband was not available. So it isn't just in the most rural states, although they're significantly affected. Even in the large populated states, there's need for this. And our customers have expressed that to us, and we've been conveying that to policymakers at NTIA, which came forward and thought about this, and thought about the fact that at locations that were unserved or underserved, and there would be one wire coming in, how do you ensure that customers are not left with a take it or leave it approach by a monopoly in that area for support, for service, for price? And one of the ways that we've come up with, based on our experience in telecommunications, is to provide open access. That is, that we and others can purchase and obtain service at those geographic locations to provide a level of choice without some of the most problematic pricing components from the Title II, from prior telco proceedings where there was TELRIC or cost-based pricing. Instead of that heavy-handed approach, it seemed to us to make sense to have a less strict policy with respect to pricing. We obviously want networks built to these locations and to service these customers, and an avoided cost model where whatever the owner or operator of the network wants to charge, it's fine, but to recognize the efficiency and savings by not having the costs for support, tier 1 support, for sales, for commissions for sales agents, and for collection activities. It's smart and it's easy to enforce because there are in every state avoided cost models and formulas that have already been devised by state public utility commissions, often in the range of 10 to 12 to 15% of a discount. And so NTIA came forward with a policy that recommended that as a best practice, thanks to Encompass and its advocacy, and by other companies that are in the room and represented here. We're now seeing states come forward with specific plans in these areas. This is one from an Illinois program that came out a week or so ago, where at the very bottom of the left-hand side, you see for open access that if you're bidding to provide service, that you get additional points, and 6% of the overall grade is for an entity that's willing to provide open access for the use of that network. We think it makes sense. We think it's good policy. We think it is a good balance between building out networks and having a competitive option for end user customers and for the industry as a whole. It's not just the post office. The types of entities that we serve include more than 1,000 schools, small businesses, libraries, governmental agencies. So we think it makes a lot of sense and are happy with it and look forward to getting it implemented with states.
Well, and Mike, this is an example of where our membership that includes companies like Granite that are providing wholesale services across the country, governmental and business. Tremendous company, just like Segra, very, very philanthropic. But our builders, who are the competitive fiber builders, like Google Fiber, like Crown Castle, everyone sees the benefit and supported in our coalition the open access or wholesale provisions. We advocated both at NTIA and now at the states as a pro-competitive means of achieving multiple objectives as we build out the internet to all and to every community, wherever that may be. So it's a tribute, I believe, to Mike, your leadership, to Granite, and to the alliance that we've put together that we can combine with great advocacy, the messaging that both builds networks and promotes competition. And that gets me to the next part of what we're really doing as we go into the next stage of our advocacy. And let me just step back up in the step back. In the video earlier, you saw President Biden sign the infrastructure bill. You saw the bipartisan group of senators, Senator Portman, who's a Republican from Ohio, Senator Bennett from Colorado. I think you saw Senator Sinema from Arizona, but Senator King from Maine were key leaders of what was known as the Bridge Act, which made a decision not to go from the FCC with a top-down approach of allocating the money, but that it would be a bottom-up approach in the country, that the money would go to the states, working with their cities and municipalities, and a competitive process to allocate and award those monies. It really is a significant departure and dramatic difference of allocating funds this way versus the old way. And we think that as I go around to state broadband offices and meet with them, everybody's excited. All of the local communities, all of the state, all of the companies that serve those areas, they feel like they get to make the plan. They get to work together. They're invested, they're engaged. And I believe that it's going to end up being a much better process of connecting the entire country. And that was so our advocacy at the legislative level was significant. We were the first to endorse the Bridge Act. And again, this campaign was driving the messaging and the terms and the internet for all and the messaging from the highest levels on a bipartisan basis. And so as we kind of talk through, the work is not yet done, I do want to take a moment just to celebrate the significance that this group of our member companies and our Encompass team and Jeff, the difference that they made and the contribution that they made. And then to win, we think, great guidance from the Commerce Department, which was the second step of this campaign. And as Mignon talked about, we're now where the rubber or the broadband hits the street, the pole, the crosses.
Or the pasture.
Yes.
Trench.
Yes, the trench. So how do we, so what is the big challenge? And what Crown Castle, Chris has worked with all of us and all of our member companies in Google Fiber to come up with a broadband ready checklist, broadband city ready checklist. Chris, I'd love for you to talk about it and And I'd love to open up the conversation to all of our panel to talk about why is the checklist and the messaging so important, and how can we really work together in this critical phase of the goal of connecting everyone.
Sure, Chip. I think the point you just made before of deploying these funds from from a bottoms-up perspective, I think it is an exciting change, but it brings about the challenge of variability.
Yeah.
That from state to state, the challenge of readiness, the challenge of experience, the challenge of building up these individual state programs is a challenge. It's not an easy thing to do. And it opens up the potential for variability of performance and process and throughput. And I think what the checklist does is it brings a common framework and outline, starting just with points of awareness. The checklist itself just brings awareness of what to expect, what to anticipate, what to focus on, the key aspects of what this deployment is all about, just the basics to remind, to train, to coach, and to be there to support communities as they work through this, so that yes, they're accountable, yes, there's local decision making, and I do think that is a positive, but there's a lack of awareness and experience of what we have to go through to make these things happen. So I think the checklist provides that awareness, that education, that framework to have a reference point.
So Chris, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things that's obvious is that, not everyone is starting from the same place. There's a lot of unevenness, and there might be some unevenness too, but unevenness when it comes to the states. And the checklist does not criticize that. It embraces, the strength that they have to move from wherever they are to where they aspirationally need to be. And that was a part of, I believe, the goal that we had for that.
And Chris, I want to thank Stacy Pies and all of her team for working on the checklist. Angie Welling, who is the general, you're leading the expansion efforts for all of Google Fiber. Google Fiber really transformed Google to the home, fiber to the home, fiber to the premise. When they entered the market, how many years ago?
2010.
2010.
Yeah.
And a lot of this type of approach of, if a city wants broadband and competition in broadband, what can cities do to make it attractive for the investment and to partner with great companies? So I'd love to hear your thoughts, that as y'all have begun to build and expand your footprint over the last 2 years, how do you see this type of best practice approach, incentives, collaborative partnerships with cities, and from Google Fiber's perspective, this campaign has meant what?
Yeah, absolutely. You certainly know the adage, all politics is local. All fiber deployment is local. There's absolutely a role for federal agencies, state broadband offices, but when we're in cities building, our relationship is with those localities. It's the cities, it's the counties. And so things like this checklist, which evokes for me the early days of Google Fiber, we had a very lengthy checklist that we used to take into cities. This is a streamlined checklist, and it makes it a little easier to distill down what we're really looking for. It's those permitting entities. It's transparent permitting. It's a really strong understanding of what we're going to be asking the city for, and in return what they expect from us. It's, efficient permit review. It is inspectors in the field who can come in and make sure that we're doing what we say we're doing. It's exploring this as pro-innovation here, exploring different deployment techniques. We are building now in our current markets largely micro-trenching, and that's something that is a little scary for cities, I'll admit, and helping them understand that it's a tried and tested method that can be used to very efficiently deploy fiber, get service to customers faster, which is the end goal for all of us, reduce construction disruption, which is also an end goal for all of us. So we really use these types of mechanisms or check-ins to say to cities like, here's what we're looking for from you, here's what you can expect from us, here's how we will work together collaboratively to deploy these networks. You know, I would say over the last 10 plus years, we have really seen the highlights and the pain points of deploying fiber networks at scale, and this really clearly explains how we can go in together as partners.
This is not easy work.
It is not easy work, no.
But as you now have 13 years of experience, Crown Castle,
25 years.
25 years. And as we communicated with our other fiber builders, you know, having some type of common language, common practices, best practices and the standards is extremely important. And so let me talk a little bit about how we have advocated on behalf of the industry that as soon as the infrastructure bill passed, we have a policy summit in Washington every spring. We invited the new head of the NTIA, Alan Davidson, to join all of our board members for a dinner. And he was really taken aback by one thing. There's $42 billion out, and he thought everybody's going to be focused on the money. Show me the money. Where's the money going? How's it going? All of those types of questions. But so many of our companies were saying, look, if you can work with us in a partnership that we can work with localities and cities and remove the barriers, the obstacles, the delays, the exorbitant costs so many times, and the unrelated costs that slow our private investments, as well as the incoming public investments. If you can help us speed deployment and streamline it and use language of a checklist that it becomes a common language, whether it's Mississippi or Massachusetts or South Carolina or Texas or
Utah.
Or Utah, whatever it might be, and so we've made great progress with them, and we're now making great progress with state broadband offices in the adoption of the checklist and that common language and those common principles and standards. Now, as you can kind of tell, these are broad principles. Each city, each region, each geography, terrain is going to be different, and so I think having broad principles is the right way to do that. Mignon, and then what I'd like to do is open it up. We went to the Mayor's Conference earlier this year in Columbus, Ohio with this campaign. Had a great round table with mayors from all over the country. Had some really leading, innovative mayors who get the fact that their community, their economic development, their education, their health care, all of their priorities will be supported by the faster they have really, really good broadband services and that they be competitive. Right. So Mignon, talk a little bit, you know mayors pretty well.
One or two.
Talk a little bit about why it's so important for us to have those relationships with the mayors as we try to deploy across the country, and then I'd like to open it up. Angie and Mike are marathoners, extreme athletes, so we'll let them compete for who can make the best case here.
You know, one of the things that you saw with that round table that, again, this, all of you, the support that you've lent to this BroadLand initiative, what we got to see was really, you know, Angie, you mentioned it, where it happens, where it really matters. You know, those hyper-local communities that know that in order for them to reach their objectives, they're going to have educated, connected constituents or neighbors, and they're going to have businesses that are viable, that will stay there in the communities and are able to grow with connected solutions. And so, you know, what we saw was those mayors recognizing that, admitting that, you know, they don't know it all, that there might be one or two places where they can improve, but that this type of rapport is very much needed for all of us to realize mutual goals. And Chip, we might even have a video that will affirm that. I don't know if you want to tee it up before the marathoners continue.
Stretch out while you play the
No, I think, all of your videos are really good. Yeah, so that'd be great.
When we had the pandemic and a lot of our students had to go to class online, it became apparent pretty quickly that Allentown was underserved.
We lost loved ones, it impacted our economy, it set back the education of our children.
There's an economic divide on having the ability to afford broadband or Wi-Fi in your home, and so you had folks going to the park to utilize park Wi-Fi or parking outside the McDonald's to use the free Wi-Fi.
Lack of access to the internet exacerbates existing vulnerabilities. We've seen that during the pandemic, and in fact, lack of available, affordable internet is tracking almost perfectly with our high poverty census tracks.
The biggest tragedy would be if we didn't take any lessons learned from that horrible experience.
Broadband needs to be seen as a core utility in the same way that we talk about water or electricity.
Innovation is dependent on connectivity.
It's not an option anymore. Internet connectivity is an essential utility.
We talk about this bipartisan infrastructure law as being a once-in-a-generation investment.
Having access to the funds made available at the federal level has been critical for our community.
Money is being handed down to states to do the work. We're closer to the people. We're engaging in local communities.
We're using the BroadLand checklist. We're making sure that we're ready not just for federal investment, but for private sector investment.
We've been working to streamline processes within our local government to make it easier for ISPs to work with us.
We're looking to decrease barriers and really just lower the time it takes for approval of any sort when we're trying to get these construction projects done.
Blanket term permits. Instead of approving 15 applications of the very same thing, approve the design.
When private sector investment is looking at your community, you don't even know it yet. And when they cross you off of their list, it's for things that you don't have in place. If you don't have the digital infrastructure, you might be crossed off the list and you don't even know it until another community that looks just like you, except for the fact that they have better broadband access, has won a significant private sector investment.
There are a lot of competing priorities that mayors have, and it's really easy to relegate broadband to the periphery. Broadband really lies at the intersection of all service provision.
Public safety is so important. The bad guys only have to get it right one time. Our public safety has to be right 100% of the time. And that's where this becomes so critical.
The digital divide is not something we can wait any longer for.
We all, as communities, need to aspire to having fiber in the homes of our families.
It's an economic imperative for us to have connectivity. If we don't have connectivity, we can't deliver Christmas on time across America.
So I think it's really incumbent upon these communities and mayors to lead the charge.
Access to stable, fast internet is vital for every American family.
It allows our young people to actually have the type of educational equity that they deserve.
And really just, again, providing equal opportunity for all your residents to fully engage in the economy.
The school children in my community, they're going to have the capacity to do their schoolwork, to be very actively engaged in our community.
We've seen more small businesses, more development, crossing our classic segregation divide.
I see this as an opportunity equalizer and a game changer for communities.
To have access to the American economy, to have equitable opportunities in life, we've got to work from the foundation up. And at the foundation of the American economy today is access to available, affordable internet.
I just thought that was
I want to know why you didn't refer to me as a marathoner.
Hey, embrace it.
What I love about that video, Chip, is first, so many good Google Fiber City mayors in there, right? San Antonio, we've got Mesa, Arizona, Kansas City, the OG Google Fiber City. But the mayor of Mesa I want to call out because he's one of our most recent markets that we've entered in the last year. And he has been an absolute champion for this project, in Mesa. And not just us. I think I've heard from some friends in the industry that are like, oh, everybody's building in Mesa. There's a reason that everyone's building in Mesa. There's a reason that it is a race to get done and connect customers in Mesa, Arizona right now, and it's because of Mayor and his staff. really are champions of this project. They understand the importance. They help us clear roadblocks. They work with us when there's problems. There's problems. This is big, messy construction projects. But he recently unblocked an issue for us where we were having with an outside entity to get a permit done, and it was taking months and months and months, and we went to the mayor and said, how can you help us unstick this? And he understood it, he got it, he had the relationships with those other entities. Think railroads and canals, not always the easiest to permit across or over. And so it's that kind of leadership that we're seeing in Mesa. We're seeing it in Des Moines, Iowa right now. Des Moines is really a champion for our project. They have a permitting system that any city that's looking to how to do permitting right should look at Des Moines. They have an online application process that is transparent, it's visible, we know where we stand at all times. They're reviewing permits oftentimes in 24 hours, which is unheard of in this business. So the mayor's really, and we've seen it throughout the history of Google Fiber, champions for expanding access in their communities. They know why it's important. They know how to help us get there. They work with us when there are issues. We try to be really good partners at all turns with them and have really strong communications. We have local teams on the ground. So I love to see Encompass and this project really highlighting leadership in this space.
You know, Angie's right. There's a great responsibility here with public funds where we have the responsibility of spending taxpayers' money. With private funds, we have the responsibility of spending shareholders' money. So any of these plus tens of millions of dollars of projects getting stagnated is stranding capital that could be going to solve all of these problems. And I think the messaging coming out of that video is there's just a great focus among the mayors understanding the benefits to come from this funding flowing and moving. And I think the checklist is a helpful way to create the outline of awareness of the key subject matters that we have to work on. But what we don't want to see happen is these tens of millions of dollars of private and public funding coming to solve these problems and then hitting choke points. Because having the awareness and realizing that permitting is a big issue doesn't necessarily solve all the issues of permitting, because having focus, having support is one thing, but sometimes we're showing up to sleepy permit offices with tens of millions of dollars to spend, and they haven't seen this kind of activity. So there's a lack of personnel, so there's hiring that needs to be done. There's training of that personnel, especially newer personnel that you would have to hire, and sometimes there's hardware and software needs. So there's important legislation that's out there now from Representative Lizzie Fletcher that looks to address some of these things. So yes, there's a lot of private and public money flowing to build things, but if you look to the checklist and the subject matters we have to address, there's additional funds necessary to support putting the checklist in action to grow those permitting offices and make them ready to absorb this activity and let the build infrastructure flow.
Yeah, 100%. In addition to stranded capital, you've stranded consumers and customers, right? We're not getting these projects done. We're not signing people up for the service that they so desperately need.
You know, one thing that struck me about the video, you had red state, blue states, you had rural, you had urban, you had every region, every part of the country, all saying the same thing, all wanting the same thing. And that's been one of the great hallmarks of the BroadLand campaign, because Mignon and I could partner as the co-chairs of this on a bipartisan basis. This, you know, this really is both red and blue. Like the first video, it is our land, and it is this, you know, so I'm just really, really proud of what this campaign has helped achieve. Mm-hmm. And as we went to the first keynote, meaning and purpose. Caroline Olson and all of the Encompass staff, as I look out and see Chris and Lindsay and Andrew and Angie and Julia, we have a great sense, and we're very thankful that Encompass has a mission-oriented culture of promoting competition because of all of the public benefits, and promoting connectivity because of all the good that does. And so we get to wake up every morning feeling like we're doing things that matter and that have meaning. And so I just want to kind of stop and say thank you for all of Encompass and the Broadband Coalition for giving us the opportunity to do something that does have significance in the work that we do. And it's been effective.
Chip, I just had one further point, and we do view even the competitive principles that I've been advocating, and Granite and Encompass have been advocating for, because part of the challenge that we see in these areas is coming up with a revenue stream that justifies the build.
Yeah.
And I do think that the open access principles provides that in a real way. The types of entities that have been not served, where they're governmental agencies, the post office, we have Department of Interior, thousands of Department of Interior locations, and unlike some of the local service providers that under GSA rules or other contracts aren't familiar, aren't capable of dealing with those entities, Granite and other competitive companies are able to be a prime contractor on that and have relationships and can provide a revenue stream for 5 years, 10 years under those contracts. So long-term revenue streams that I think makes the financing and the financial case to build there easier. Second, to arguments with respect to rate regulation, which I've seen and heard in response and pushback on that. This, in fact, isn't the first federal program to basically have these types of principles for open access. I saw Joey Wender somewhere here, and expect we may hear some of this soon.
I see Joey in the back, another good Massachusetts man.
So there, under the Treasury's program, the Connect Act program, it too has an open access preference and avoided cost principles to ensure that the Connect doesn't build out pure monopolies and that customers and end users have better experiences. And I think that the program has proven to be successful thus far. I do think that the NTIA program, as administered by states with those principles, will be successful.
Yeah.
So look forward to it.
And just to plug in, as we recognize Joey and Angie, and they're going to be coming up and talking about the Treasury program. But this goes also back into our campaign. Working with Joey, in many ways, he set the precedence of really having a future-proof investment going into the pandemic funding that then eventually led as the model of the BEAD or the infrastructure bill and the open access and the competition type principles that we've been working as an association for many years. All of those things have come together. And Mike, to your point, all of our builders look at open access as just one more revenue stream for them, and that it is a good business model, a good market-based driven model. Let me, as we begin to close and the time is running out, I'm going to start Angie, with you and go down. Any closing thoughts as we go into the next phase of the national project of connecting every American?
Yeah, I would just say, Google Fiber is not pursuing BEAD funding, but we see this as an opportunity to tear down barriers to deployment across the country, right? We are founded on the principle that communities need high-speed broadband to thrive, so we're thrilled to see the levels of investment, public and private, that's going into improving America's internet infrastructure right now, and anything we can do to help share lessons learned, both good and bad over the years, and best practices, we're here to do.
Thank you. Chris?
We touched a lot about permitting, but I would further underscore the necessity for access to poles, access to conduits, being able to do that in a streamlined fashion, able to do that in a balanced cost way, as well as supporting of innovation techniques to deploying fiber optics faster. Those are important factors as well that are part of the checklist as well, but just to highlight those further, they're absolutely necessity to make things go better.
Mike?
No, just that, it's a truly historic opportunity to spend and to build infrastructure in this way, that the policies that have been promoted and provided by NTIA are, we think, well balanced and set end users up to have a better experience and to make a meaningful difference in society, and we're happy to be part of it.
And as a recovering government employee and regulator, I will say this. When you see these different models and iterations when it comes to a series of recovery funding and rules and regulations. What I am most proud of is everyone is evolving and adapting, and they see the potential of meeting the needs of connecting these communities. It is not going to be a perfect, every day is not going to be a holiday when it comes to this, but every day has the potential to be a better, more connected one. And so, again, I'm most proud of what the government is learning, how it is better partnering with all of you, and how the communities are continuing to be engaged in order for all of us collectively to address their needs. They know what they want and need. They just don't have all the tools to get there, but together we can make it all happen, and I'm really proud to be a part of this initiative. So thank you.
And so let me real quickly sum things up. We're going into the most critical phase, the execution of the infrastructure funding and the objective of connecting every Americans, tearing down barriers, streamlining so that we achieve as fast as possible. There are other obstacles like railroads, and we're, as part of this campaign and Encompass, we have legislation in the House and soon in the Senate that will make it much easier, faster, more affordable to cross the railroad, which is oftentimes the actual line that divides our digital and broadband connectivity. So it's another big priority. But as we go into, as the states adopt plans at the end of the year, we'll be working as a campaign to finish the job. And we need all of our member companies to join us and those in this room. And as we spread, go back to our respective communities and in our companies, if you want to join the campaign, let us know. We'd love to have you. We'd love to add your voice, your story, and your message to what I think has been a remarkable success and a great tribute to all of the companies that are here that have been a part of this. I want to thank Jeff Sharp for the tremendous messaging and video that he's put together. I love the videos today. And so it's a great opportunity for us to, as we gather here, to then go back and redouble the efforts to finish the job, to connect every American. So thank you all very much.